The stars had never seemed so quiet. Captain Doan stood at the bridge of his ship, the horizon's edge, and watched the endless darkness stretch before him. 70 years ago, humanity had joined the Galactic Confederation. 70 years of peace. 70 years of pretending. He was a tall man with tired eyes and hands that had seen too many battles. But the aliens did not know this. To them, he was just another human commander, adequate, unremarkable. Exactly what humanity wanted them to think. "Captain, we are approaching the council station," said Lieutenant Yuna, from her position at the tactical console. She was young, brilliant, and one of the few officers who knew the truth about Earth's real capabilities. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. "Slow our approach," Doan ordered. "Let them see us coming. They like that." The Galactic Confederation was home to over 2,000 species. Some had traveled the stars for millions of years. They called themselves the Elder Species, and they looked at humanity the way adults look at children learning to walk. Patience, mixed with mild amusement. The council station was massive. It floated in the space between 3 dying suns, a monument to ancient power. Ships from 100 different worlds moved around it like insects around a hive. Doan could see the vessels of the Elder Species. They were beautiful and terrifying. Weapons that could crack planets. Shields that could stop stars. Technology so advanced it seemed like magic. And then there was the human fleet. Smaller, simpler, armed with what the galaxy considered primitive weapons. Nuclear warheads. Kinetic railguns. Basic energy shields. The aliens tolerated human presence the way one tolerates a small dog at a gathering of wolves. This was exactly how humanity wanted it. The docking procedure took an hour. When Doan finally stepped onto the station, he was greeted by a creature that towered over him. High Arbiter Velcros was an insectoid being with 6 arms and eyes that reflected light like black mirrors. He was one of the most powerful figures in the Confederation. Captain Doan Velcros said, his voice clicking and buzzing through a translator. "Welcome. Your ambassador Siwan is waiting in the council chamber." "Thank you, High Arbiter." They walked through corridors that hummed with energy. Aliens of every shape and size moved past them. Some had tentacles. Some had wings. Some existed as clouds of living gas contained in force fields. Humanity was just one small voice in this vast chorus. Ambassador Siwan was a patient man. He had spent 40 years learning how to smile while being insulted. He had mastered the art of bowing just low enough to show respect without showing weakness. When Doan entered the chamber, Siwan gave him a small nod. "Captain, good timing. The council is about to discuss the Void Swarm." The Void Swarm. Even the name sent cold fear through the galaxy. They were a biomechanical hive species that consumed everything in their path. Entire star systems had gone dark. Billions of lives erased. And they were getting closer. The council chamber was a vast dome filled with floating platforms. Each platform held representatives from different species. Doan took his place beside Siwan on the human platform, which floated near the bottom. Far from the center of power, High Arbiter Velcros rose to speak. "The Void Swarm has consumed 12 more systems in the past cycle. Our projections show they will reach the inner territories within 2 years. We must respond." A creature made of living crystal spoke next. Its voice rang like bells. "The Elder Fleets will deploy. We have weapons that can slow them." "Slow them," another alien growled. This was Warlord Grethix, a massive reptilian being covered in battle scars. "Not stop them. Not destroy them. Not slow them." "Is this the best we can offer?" The chamber erupted in arguments. Doan watched silently. He had seen this before. Fear made people argue instead of act. Finally, Velcros turned his many eyes toward the human platform. "Ambassador Siwan, humanity has offered military support. What forces can you provide?" Siwan stood slowly. Every eye in the chamber watched him. "Earth will deploy 3 carrier groups. 47 vessels in total. We will fight alongside the Confederation." Grethix let out a sound that might have been laughter. 47 vessels? With your primitive weapons? You will be destroyed in the first wave. We are aware of the risks, Saiwan said calmly. Then why bother? Another delegate asked. Your technology is generations behind ours. What can humans possibly contribute? Siwan smiled his patient smile. We are good at surviving. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made. Fleets were assigned. Humanity was placed in a support role, as expected. When it finally ended, Doan walked with Siwan through the quieter corridors of the station. They think we are fools, Doan said. They think we are weak, Siwan corrected. There is a difference. Fools can be dangerous. The weak are simply ignored. And you prefer being ignored? I prefer keeping our secrets. Later that night, Lieutenant Yuna found Doan standing alone in the observation deck. Stars filled the window like scattered diamonds. She stood beside him in silence for a long moment. Permission to speak freely, Captain. Granted. I have read the classified files. I know what we are hiding. Why do we hold back? If we showed them our true strength, they would respect us. They would fear us. Dohan did not look at her. He kept his eyes on the stars. Yes, they would fear us. And that fear would become hate. And that hate would become war. Not with the Void Swarm. With everyone else, we pretend to be weak forever. We pretend until we cannot pretend anymore. He finally turned to face her. His eyes held something old and heavy. The galaxy is not ready to see what humanity really is, Lieutenant. We were forging weapons of mass destruction while most of these species were still learning to make fire. We were fighting world wars before we even dreamed of space travel. War is not something we learned from the stars. We carry it in our blood. Yuna was quiet for a moment. What happens when they find out? I don't know. But I hope we can show them that we are more than our worst instincts. That we chose peace not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to choose it. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the Void Swarm continued its endless hunger. It moved toward the galaxy's heart with patient, terrible purpose. It had consumed civilizations older than Earth's first cities. It had never known defeat, but it had also never met humanity, and humanity had not yet shown its true face. The Corvin system had been beautiful once. 3 blue suns surrounded by 17 planets full of life. Now it was a graveyard. The Void Swarm had arrived 2 days ago, and already half the system was dark. Captain Doan stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched death approach. The swarm filled his view screen like a living shadow. Millions of vessels, each one a twisted thing of metal and flesh, moved as one. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They only consumed. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Yuna said. Her voice was steady, but Doan could see the tension in her shoulders. Elder Fleet is taking forward position. We are assigned to the rear guard. Of course we are, Doan muttered. The joint fleet was impressive by any standard. 700 vessels from 12 different species. The Elder ships were massive, their hulls glowing with energy shields that could stop almost anything. Warlord Grethix commanded from his flagship, a destroyer nearly 5 kilometers long. Plasma cannons lined its sides like the spines of some great beast. The human contribution looked pitiful in comparison. 47 ships with basic armor and simple weapons. Several alien commanders had openly questioned why humans were even present. All vessels. This is Warlord Grethix. The reptilian commander's voice crackled across all channels. The swarm approaches. Today we show these mindless creatures the power of the Confederation. Attack formation. Engage at will. The Elder Fleet moved forward like a wave of steel and fire. Doan watched plasma beams cut across the darkness, each one carrying enough energy to melt a city. Singularity bombs detonated among the swarm, creating temporary black holes that swallowed thousands of enemy vessels. For a moment, hope lived in the hearts of every crew member. Then, the swarm adapted. Captain, the enemy is changing formation, Yuna reported, her voice rising with alarm. They are ... learning. The swarm vessels began to split apart, becoming smaller and harder to hit. They moved between the plasma beams like water flowing around stones. The singularity bomb still destroyed many, but for every 1,000 killed, 10,000 more poured through the gaps. Grethix's flagship is taking heavy damage, an officer called out. Shields at 40% and falling. Doan made a decision. All human vessels move to support the warlord. Get between him and the swarm. Sir, we are supposed to stay in reserve, Una reminded him. The reserve does not matter if there is no one left to protect. The human fleet surged forward. Their railguns fired streams of metal at incredible speeds, tearing through swarm vessels. Their nuclear warheads detonated in bright flashes of destruction. The aliens had called these weapons primitive. But primitive did not mean useless. Grethix's voice came through the communication channel. Human vessels. What are you doing? You were ordered to stay back. Warlord, your shields are failing. We are buying you time to retreat. There was silence. Then, something Doan never expected. Thank you, human. The battle raged for 6 hours. In the end, it was not enough. The Elder Fleet lost 300 ships. The human fleet lost 12. The swarm lost millions, but millions more remained. All vessels retreat, came the final order. Fall back to secondary positions. As the survivors limped away from Corvin, Dr. Minji rushed onto the bridge. She was the ship's xenobiologist, a small woman with sharp eyes and a brilliant mind. Her face was pale with fear. Captain, I have analyzed the swarm's movement patterns. This is not random expansion. What do you mean? They are heading somewhere specific. I traced their trajectory. Her hands trembled as she handed him a data pad. They are going to the Sol system. They are going to Earth. Doan stared at the data. The numbers were clear. The swarm was not mindlessly spreading across the galaxy. It was hunting, and its target was humanity's home. How is that possible? Una asked. How do they even know about Earth? I do not know, Minji admitted. But they are coming. And at their current speed, they will reach Sol in 8 months. The weight of this information settled over the bridge like a funeral shroud. Earth. 7 billion people. Humanity's cradle. Everything they had built. Everything they had become. Doan closed his eyes. He had known this day might come. He had prayed it never would. That night, as the damaged fleet made its slow journey towards safe space, Una intercepted a classified transmission. It was heavily encrypted, meant only for the highest levels of Earth Command. She should not have been able to decode it, but she was very good at her job. The message was short. Just a few words that changed everything. Protocol Prometheus is now authorized. Prepare Phase 1 deployment. Admiral Taiho acknowledges and confirms. Una brought the message to Doan's quarters. He read it in silence. His face showed no surprise, only resignation. You know what this means? She said. It was not a question. Yes, then tell me the truth, Captain. What is Protocol Prometheus? What has Earth been hiding? Doan set down the data pad. He looked at Una with eyes that held the weight of secrets too heavy for one person to carry. What you saw today was not our military, Lieutenant. The ships, the weapons, the technology. All of it is what we show others. Mask. A performance. Then what is real? Behind that mask is something else. Something we built in the shadows. Something we hoped we would never need. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Humanity did not stop advancing when we joined the Confederation. We just stopped showing our advances. We built 2 civilizations. One for diplomacy. One for survival. Why? Because when the Confederation found us, they saw a species that had just discovered space travel. Young, harmless, easy to control. They did not look deeper. They did not see the wars we had fought among ourselves, the weapons we had created, the horrors we had survived. Doan's voice grew quiet. We let them see what they wanted to see, and we kept building in secret, just in case. In case of what? In case someone came to destroy us? He stood and walked to the window, staring at the distant stars. The Confederation has rules against destabilizing technologies. Weapons too dangerous to use. We would have been sanctioned, contained, maybe even destroyed. So we hid, we pretended, and we waited. And now, Now the waiting is over. He turned back to face her. Protocol Prometheus means Earth is done hiding. The swarm wants our home. They have no idea what they are walking into. Far away, in the hollowed core of Mars, machines that had slept for decades began to wake. Ships larger than cities powered on for the first time. Weapons that could end worlds prepared for deployment. Humanity had worn a mask for 70 years. That mask was about to fall. High Arbiter Velcros had lived for 3,000 years. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had seen species evolve and go extinct. He thought he understood the galaxy and all its secrets. He was wrong. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. Velcros traveled aboard his personal vessel, accompanied by Mithrios, an ancient being who served as the Confederation's chief historian. Mithrios resembled a floating jellyfish made of pure light. His purpose was to observe and record. The humans have agreed to a limited inspection, Velcros said as they approached the Sol system. They say their defenses are modest. We shall see. Mithrios pulsed with gentle colors. I have been reviewing Earth's records in our archives. Something troubles me. What troubles you? Their energy consumption does not match their reported technology. They produce far more power than their civilization should need. The numbers are hidden in small errors across thousands of reports. Easy to miss unless you look carefully. Velcros considered this. You think they are hiding something? I think humans are very good at showing only what they want others to see. The first sign that something was wrong came when they passed Jupiter. Ambassador Saiwan had arranged for them to approach through a specific corridor, avoiding certain regions of space. Velcros had thought this was simply navigation protocol. Then his sensors detected the asteroids, not natural asteroids. Fortresses, hundreds of them, hollowed out and filled with machinery. Weapons platforms pointed outward at every angle. Energy signatures suggested power sources that rivaled small stars. Ambassador Sawan Velcros contacted the human escort ship. What are those installations? There was a pause before Saiwan's calm voice responded. Defensive positions, High Arbiter. They are not usually visible to visitors. I apologize for the confusion. Those are not simple defense platforms. Each one could destroy a fleet. Yes, they could. Velcros exchanged a look with Mithrios. The historian's lights flickered with growing concern. They continued toward Earth. More surprises awaited. The orbital ring around Earth was not a ring. It was a shell. Thousands of stations connected by beams of energy, forming a protective sphere around the planet. Ships moved between them, and these were not the simple vessels Velcros had seen at the Council. These were warships of a different design entirely. Sleeker, darker, built for purposes, did not want to imagine. General Haiyan met them at the primary docking station. She was a woman of middle age, with gray hair cut short and eyes that held no warmth. She wore a uniform Velcros had never seen before, black with silver marks that meant nothing to him. Hi, Arbiter. Welcome to Earth. Her voice was polite, but carried the tone of someone who gave orders, not requests. General Haiyan, I was told your military was limited. What I am seeing suggests otherwise. What you saw before was our diplomatic fleet. What you see now is something else. She led them through corridors that hummed with hidden energy. Soldiers stood at every corner, armed with weapons that Velcros could not identify. They moved with the precision of beings who had trained for war their entire lives. The Confederation has rules, Velcros said carefully. Certain technologies are forbidden. Certain weapons are too dangerous to build. These rules exist to prevent destruction on a galactic scale. We are aware of the rules, Haiyan replied. And yet you have built these things. We have built many things, High Arbiter. The question is why? She stopped walking and turned to face him. When the Confederation found Earth, what did you see? A young species. New to space. Eager to learn, and you never looked deeper. There was no reason to. No, there was no desire to. Haiyan resumed walking. You saw what you wanted to see? A harmless species that posed no threat. You never asked about our history, our wars, our nature. They entered a large chamber. Inside, holographic displays showed Earth's history. Velcros watched in growing horror as images flickered past. Wars fought with primitive weapons. Then wars fought with machines. Then wars fought with weapons that could poison entire regions for generations. Cities turned to ash. Oceans boiled. Millions dead in instants. We did this to ourselves, Heian said quietly. Long before we knew other life existed in the universe. We created weapons of mass destruction because we were afraid of each other. We killed on scales that most species never achieved because we were very, very good at it. Mithrios drifted closer to the displays, recording everything. His lights pulsed rapidly. This level of violence, this early in a species' development, it is unprecedented in our records. We are unprecedented, Heian agreed. When the Confederation came with its rules and its treaties, we had a choice. Show you what we really were and be feared, or hide and be accepted. You chose to hide. We chose to hope. Hope that we could become something better. Hope that peace was possible. She turned off the displays, but we never stopped preparing for the alternative. A young technician named Kangman entered the room. He was nervous in the presence of such important beings, but he had been ordered to explain. Hi, Arbiter. What you have seen is only the first layer of our defenses. Earth has been preparing for an extinction-level threat since we first understood that such threats existed. How many layers are there? Velcros asked. Kangman hesitated. He looked at Heian, who nodded. 7. The asteroid fortresses are Layer 1. The orbital shell is Layer 2. Below that are planetary defense networks, atmospheric weapon systems, underground military installations, the Strategic Reserve Fleet, and finally, the installations in Mars. What is in Mars? The Forge. Kangman's voice dropped low. Where we build the weapons too dangerous to keep on Earth. Velcros felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. True, primal fear. Why are you showing us this now? General Heian walked to a window that looked out at Earth. The blue planet hung in darkness, beautiful and peaceful from this distance. But Velcros now understood that peace was a choice, not a nature. Because the Void Swarm is coming here, Heian said. In 8 months, they will reach this system with their full force. And when they arrive, they will not find the weak species they expect. They will find us. She turned back to face him. The galaxy is about to learn what humanity really is. Hi, Arbiter. I am giving you the chance to understand before that happens. An alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed across every screen. General and officer called out. Long-range sensors detect swarm vessels entering the outer system. Advanced scouts. At least 50,000 units. Heian smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Good. They are early. Now you will see. She issued orders with calm precision. Across the system, weapons began to power on. Ships moved into position. The sleeping giant that was humanity's true military stretched and prepared to wake. Velcros watched with ancient eyes that had seen countless wonders across 3,000 years of life. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Humanity had pretended to be prey. They had always been predators. The Void Swarm came like a plague of shadows. 10 million vessels poured into the Sol system, blocking out the stars themselves. They had consumed countless civilizations. They had destroyed species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They expected this world to be no different. They were about to learn how wrong they were, Captain. Doan stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge, which had been moved to a safe position near Earth's orbital shell. Beside him, Lieutenant Yuna watched with wide eyes. High Arbiter Velcros and Mithrios floated nearby, unable to look away from the approaching nightmare. 10 million vessels, Velcros whispered. No force in the galaxy could stop such a number. Watch, was all Doan said. General Heian's voice echoed across every human channel. Calm, cold, absolute, all units. This is Supreme Command. Protocol Prometheus is active. Phase 1, Denial. You are authorized to engage. From the darkness behind Jupiter, something moved. Ships emerged from hidden docks built into the moons themselves. But these were not the ships the galaxy had seen before. These were monsters of metal and fire. Dreadnoughts 3 kilometers long. Carriers holding thousands of fighters. Battleships with weapons that glowed with barely contained energy, and leading them all. The flagship of Admiral Taiho, the ship had no official name. Soldiers simply called it the End. "What are those weapons?" Mithrios asked, his lights pulsing with frantic energy. "I do not recognize the energy signatures." "You would not," Doan replied. "We invented them in secret. Some bend the fabric of space itself. Others use antimatter in ways your scientists said were impossible. And some are simply very old ideas, made very large." Phase 1 began. From the asteroid fortresses, metal rods began to fire. They were simple things, just tungsten and iron, but they traveled at nearly the speed of light. Relativistic kill vehicles, humanity called them. When they struck the swarm, there was no explosion. There was simply nothing. Entire clusters of enemy vessels ceased to exist, converted to expanding clouds of particles in an instant. Thousands of swarm ships died in the first minute. Impossible Velcros breathed. That technology, the energy required, it would take a star. "We built reactors inside Mercury," Eunice said quietly. "We have been doing this for decades." The swarm adapted, as it always did. It spread its forces thin, making itself harder to hit. It sent waves of smaller vessels forward as shields. But humanity had expected this. Phase 2. Dominance. "Fighter wings, you are cleared to engage." From the carriers, thousands of small ships poured forth. Leading them was pilot Jisoo, the greatest ace in Earth's hidden fleet. Her calcine was ghost, because by the time enemies saw her, they were already dead. "All wings follow my lead. Keep your spacing tight. Let Arya guide your targeting." Arya. The name made Velcros freeze. "Did she say Arya? Is that what I think it is?" Doan nodded slowly. "Artificial intelligence. Networked across our entire military. She coordinates every ship, every weapon, every soldier as a single unified force. The Confederation banned combat AI 10,000 years ago. The risks are too great. The potential for disaster is absolute. We know the risks. We built safeguards, and we built her anyway." Doan's voice carried no apology. "Because we knew that someday something would come that required everything we had." Chu's fighters struck the swarm like lightning. Their weapons fired antimatter in concentrated beams, cutting through enemy vessels as if they were paper. Arya calculated trajectories 1,000,000 times per second, guiding each pilot to perfect positions. Warning them of dangers before they even appeared. The swarm had never faced anything like this. It could not adapt to an enemy that fought as one mind. Millions of swarm vessels died in the first hour, but still they came. The hive mind that controlled them had never known defeat. It did not understand the concept. It simply pressed forward, sending more and more of its children into the fire. General Heian watched the battle from her command center inside Mars. Around her, screens showed every aspect of the fight. She saw the numbers. She calculated the odds. And she gave the order that would change everything. Phase 3. Annihilation. Activate the Prometheus array. Deep within the forge, machines that had waited for this moment for 50 years came alive. A weapon that humanity had hoped would never be needed powered on. It was not a single weapon. It was a network of satellites spread across the entire system, each one containing a fragment of something terrible together. They created a field of destructive energy that spread outward at the speed of light. The swarm felt it. For the first time in its eternal existence, the hive mind experienced something new. Something it had never known, fear, across every frequency. A transmission burst forth from the swarm. It was not language as most species understood it. It was pure emotion, raw and primal, broadcast to anyone who could hear. "What are you? What is this? We have consumed worlds beyond counting. We have ended species older than your stars. What are you?" General Heian opened a response channel. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the system. "We are humanity. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us with ice and fire and plague. We are the survivors of 1,000 wars we fought against ourselves. We have split atoms and conquered diseases and walked on our own moon before we ever dreamed of meeting you." She paused. Around her, her staff watched in silence. "You came to consume our home. You came thinking we were weak. You came expecting prey." Her voice hardened into something cold and sharp. "You found something else." The Prometheus array fired. Reality itself seemed to scream as waves of destructive energy washed over the swarm. Vessels did not explode. They simply stopped existing. Matter converted to energy, converted to nothing. The hive mind felt each death as its own. 1,000,000,000 points of agony flooding its consciousness. In 6 hours, it was over. 2,000,000,000 swarm vessels entered the Sol system. None left. On the observation deck, High Arbiter Velcro stood in absolute silence. Mithrios had stopped recording. Even his lights had gone still. "That was not a battle," Velcros finally said. "That was an execution." "Yes," Doan agreed.
Ow.
"You could have done this at any time. At Corvin, you could have saved the Elder Fleet. You could have stopped the swarm before it consumed those 12 systems." "No," Doan shook his head. "We could not. Because then you would have seen, and you would have feared us more than you feared the swarm. And now? Now you have seen anyway. And now the galaxy knows." Lieutenant Yuna pointed at the communication console. Lights blinked across its surface, too many to count. Transmissions from every Confederation world. They all watched. Every species with eyes turned toward Sol today. Velcros understood. The entire galaxy had witnessed humanity's true nature. In a single day, everything had changed. The balance of power that had held for millions of years had shifted. Humanity was no longer the young species learning to walk. They were something else entirely, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Sol. 3 months of silence, fear, and endless questions. The galaxy had watched humanity erase 2,000,000,000 swarm vessels in 6 hours. Now the galaxy waited to see what humanity would do next. The council chamber had never been so full. 2,000 species had sent their representatives. Platforms floated in every direction, filling the vast dome with beings of every shape and form. Some had traveled for weeks to be present. None wanted to miss what would happen here. Ambassador Siwan stood on the human platform, which had been moved to the center of the chamber. He was no longer positioned at the bottom, among the lesser species. He was exactly where everyone could see him, and everyone was watching. The silence was absolute. Beings who had once dismissed humanity as primitive children now could not meet the ambassador's eyes. Fear hung in the air like poison. High Arbiter Velcros rose first. His voice was steady, but those who knew him could hear the tension beneath. 3 months ago, the Void Swarm, the greatest threat our galaxy has known in 10,000 years, was destroyed, completely, absolutely, by a single species that we believed to be among the weakest in the Confederation. He paused. Letting those words settle, we were wrong. We were very wrong. Mithrios drifted forward, his lights pulsing in patterns that indicated formal testimony. "I have spent these 3 months studying human history. What I found has disturbed me deeply. I will share my findings now." Chamber's central display activated. Images appeared. Human history laid bare for all to see. Humans developed nuclear weapons approximately 300 years after discovering basic electricity. For comparison, most species take between 2,000 and 5,000 years to reach that same point. Mithrios paused as shock rippled through the audience. They created these weapons not to fight an external enemy, but to fight each other. More images? Wars without number. Conflicts spanning centuries. Weapons growing more terrible with each generation. They developed artificial intelligence before achieving faster-than-light travel. They cracked their own genetic code while they were still fighting wars with chemical weapons. They are, by every measure in our historical records, the most martially accelerated species ever documented. Then murmurs. Then a rising tide of fearful whispers. Warlord Grethix, his scales still bearing scars from the battle at Corvon, spoke next. His voice was heavy with something between respect and dread. I fought beside their primitive fleet. I mocked their simple weapons. They saved my life while I insulted them. He turned to face the human platform directly. Why? Why hide such power? You could have ruled this confederation. You could have conquered every species in this chamber. Ambassador Siwan waited for silence before responding. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the vast dome.
Ow.
You ask why we hid. The answer is simple. We were afraid. Its confusion rippled through the audience. This was not the answer they expected. Not afraid of you, Siwan continued. Afraid of ourselves. Our history is written in blood. Every advancement we made, we first used for war. Every discovery, every invention, every step forward came with new ways to kill. We looked at our past and saw monsters. He stepped closer to the edge of his platform, his eyes moving across the gathered species. When the Confederation found us, we saw a chance to become something different, to be part of a community instead of a conqueror, to learn peace instead of teaching war. His voice softened. We hid our strength because we did not trust ourselves with it. We pretended to be weak because we feared what we might become if we showed our true nature. A small creature made of living glass spoke from a distant platform. Its voice was thin and frightened. And now? Now that you have shown us? What happens now? Siwan looked down at the podium before him. On it sat a datapad containing humanity's official response, prepared by generals and politicians and diplomats. But he did not read from it. Now we have a choice. We have always had a choice. A holographic image of General Heian appeared beside him. She stood in her command center, surrounded by the machinery of war. Her voice was broadcast to the entire chamber. Earth will share its defensive technologies with any Confederation species that requests them. We will provide protection for worlds that cannot defend themselves. We will stand against threats like the Swarm, so that no civilization needs to face extinction alone. Her cold eyes softened, just slightly. But we will not seek power. We will not demand tribute. We will not conquer. Why not? Velcros asked. With your strength, you could take everything, because we have done that before, Heian replied. Humans conquering other humans. Nations destroying nations. Empires rising and falling on mountains of corpses. We know how that story ends. It ends in ashes and regret. We do not want to live that story again. Council deliberated for 7 hours. Old alliances fractured. New agreements formed. Fear battled with hope in every discussion. In the end, the vote was not close. Humanity was granted a permanent seat on the Elder Council. The first species to be elevated in over 2 million years. Some voted from genuine respect for what humanity had shown. Many voted from fear of what humanity might do if denied. Siwan accepted the honor with a simple bow. He did not smile. This was not a victory. It was a burden. Later, after the ceremonies ended and the delegates departed, Captain Duan and Lieutenant Yuna stood on the observation deck of the council station. Earth was too far away to see, but they both looked in that direction anyway. It is done, Yuna said. We are no longer hiding. The galaxy knows what we are. Yes. Does that frighten you? Doan considered the question. He thought about the battles he had seen, the secrets he had kept, the weight that every human soldier carried, knowing what their species was capable of. It terrifies me, he admitted, but not because of what the galaxy might do. I am terrified of what we might do. We have shown our teeth. The temptation to use them will always be there. Then we must be strong. Strong enough to fight? Doan shook his head. No, strong enough not to. That is the real test. That has always been the real test. They stood in silence, watching stars that now knew humanity's name. Back on Earth. General Heian stood before a window in her office. Below, soldiers trained in vast facilities that had been secret for decades. Ships that could break worlds moved through orbital docks. The forge on Mars continued its endless work. A young officer entered. General, the Council has officially recognized us. We have a seat among the elders. Heihan nodded slowly. Good. Now comes the hard part. The hard part. We destroyed the swarm. We are the most powerful species in the galaxy. That is not power. Heian turned to face the officer. Her eyes held the weight of responsibility that few could understand. Power is choosing what not to do. Power is having the ability to dominate and choosing peace instead. Power is being the monster and refusing to act like one. She looked back at the window, at the world she had sworn to protect. The galaxy will watch us now. Every choice we make, every action we take, they will be waiting for us to become what they fear. Conquerors, tyrants, monsters. Her voice hardened with resolve. We will prove them wrong. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to be better than our history. Somewhere in the vastness of space, other species looked toward the Sol system with new eyes. Some saw saviors. Some saw threats. Some saw the future itself, uncertain and frightening and full of possibility. Humanity had revealed its true face at last. Now it was time to show what that face meant. Not the face of conquerors, not the face of monsters, but the face of a species still learning, still growing, still fighting to become worthy of the power they possessed. The galaxy would be watching, and humanity would prove that the greatest strength was not destruction. It was the choice to build instead.